And we're back from that beautiful report about the tapestry and weaving. Now, medical equipment, ladies and gentlemen, is fundamental to modern healthcare, playing a critical role in the prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation of illnesses. But what happens when they become unfunctional? This is where the HealthTek.Xchange initiative comes in to promote sustainability in the healthcare sector by repurposing surplus medical equipment and supplies and transforming what is currently underutilized into real value that serves the patient and reduces a lot of waste. With that being said, let's welcome Hussein Al-Sayed, health technology consultant. First, welcome on the program.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thanks for KTV2 for having me in.
Well, all thanks honestly goes to all of your guests for dedicating the time out of your day to come here and educate us all on so many different sectors. Speaking of which, I do want to give you the platform to talk to us a little bit about sustainability, and especially when it comes to the health factor.
All right. Thank you, Abdullah, again. So sustainability in layman's word is nothing but consuming what is enough and probably preserving the environment and the resources for the future as well. So this is what is actually driving us at the moment in the healthcare industry. Healthcare industry consumes lots of material, lots of equipment, lots of electronics as well. And because we're trying to keep up with the technology in healthcare, because it keeps improving with time. For example, 50 years ago, we never had a CT scanner. We never had the glucometer, for example. And now with the research that is going on around the world, we're getting new devices, new technologies, and of course, new material. And that's a lot to consume. Unfortunately, because of the change in technology, these materials are being discarded from time to time. And this is not the issue yet. The issue is sometimes just being ready for the patient and for the healthcare service, we have to stock lots of equipment, lots of material into our stores, into the floors of the hospital, just to be ready for any critical case, for example, or any illness that may come or to be introduced to the hospital. Okay, so here is the issue. Because of this, we're having stocks, huge stocks of equipment, huge piles of material in the hospitals, which is, again, good for the patient, but bad to the environment and bad to our resources. And this is where we started in HealthTek.Xchange. We noticed that every hospital, has excessive amount of material and equipment. So we thought, what about sharing those? Because again, even though we have stocks of and piles of medical devices, at one point in time, at one day, our customers or our hospitals actually run out of something. So what about sharing with hospitals? What about exchanging between hospitals? And this is the idea that came to our mind, and this is why we started HealthTek.Xchange.
I do love this because I was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I broke my leg for an extended amount of time that I spent in the hospital. And I do remember this was going back like again 10 or maybe 15 years ago, there was problems with the wheelchair. And then my parents were like, okay, let's just take another patient's wheelchair. And then they talked to them, the patient was done, and then they gave me. So it's kind of, not in a similar way, but in a similar fashion, repurposing these kind of instruments that a lot of people need them, when sometimes people who have them may not need them anymore. Yeah, I do want to ask you about, because you did mention the HealthTek.Xchange, I want you to go into a little bit more detail into what it is.
Sure. Again, the idea, as we just spoke earlier, it started with the problem that there are excessive amount of supplies and equipment in some hospital, while there is abundance in other hospitals.
So this is a movement.
Exactly. It is an initiative. You're right. So that initiative, we started with all hospitals by just creating an electronic community. At the moment, it's simply, a Telegram, let's say, channel. And in near future, hopefully, we will develop our own platform to do it. So we started gathering all hospitals. And each hospital will have a representative in that group who will post any need or any surplus. And then the next representative from the next hospital will say, hey, I have those and I'm not using them. What about passing by to my hospital, let's say, deliver them to me, and we will exchange it with something else, for example. So the exchanging media, of course, is very dynamic. So every hospital has the right to offer something, offer their surplus, either for money or in return of something else. So it is back to the old trading, let's say, a practice that we used to have thousands of years ago.
As the most original form of transactions.
Right.
I do want to ask you about, there are maybe some patients who worry about the safety protocols or precautions when reusing or sharing stuff. أخاف إنه خربان. Sometimes they tell you, or something of the like. What do you have today to address those?
Yeah, well, that happens even within the hospital itself, because lots of time we use some machines cross patients. So usually there is a protocol within the hospital, within the healthcare service provider organization, that will help to sanitize, for example, sterilize or disinfect the device before being used by another patient. So same rule applies. So if you are exchanging or you are transferring some device or some medical supply to another entity, same thing applies. It has to be sterilized, disinfected, and then shipped. Of course, that also requires some regulatory, let's say, compliance issues. So for example, in Kuwait, we have a rule, we have a law that governs the transfer of some of the medical equipment, like the radiation emitting devices. So in that case, both parties has to agree with the regulator, in this case, Ministry of Health, before sending it back and forth.
So, alhamdulillah, there are the groundworks here so people can feel safe and assured. Because honestly, when it comes to medical equipment, even you, the person who is going to give their medical equipment, from the inside you're not going to give something faulty, right? It's الضمير يدخل بالسالفة. So you don't want to go into all those territories. But moving on, there's the National CSSD Support Network. What is this initiative about?
It's another initiative in the same way that we started in HealthTek.Xchange. So what is HealthTek.CSSD? CSSD stands for the Central Sterilization Support or Supplies Department, which is the place where we sterilize the equipment after being used. So, for example, something like the blade or the forceps or the retractors, these are instruments used during surgeries in the operating theater, okay? And of course, there are more examples. But these equipment, when they are used during surgery, they get exposed to what we call patient fluids, okay, blood and so on, okay? And as per the guidelines, these instruments have to be sterilized, of course, first cleaned, and then sterilized. And sterilization is a process that is well defined in Ministry of Health, in the Center for Disease, that you have to expose such instruments to high temperatures, high levels of pressure, and of course with humidity. This is called steam sterilization, for example. There is also dry sterilization. So what happens when the machine is down, the sterilization machine is down, then the hospital or the center will run into issues because there will be some backlog of services, backlog of operating surgeries. In that case, what should happen is we call another center who has another machine and he has access, or they have access, let's say loads of sterilization. Okay, we can send those piles or send that load to the other hospital for sterilization, and then it goes back. Of course, again, there are protocols that must be followed as per the regulator, which is, again, Minister of Health, that before transferring, they have to be cleaned, washed, packed, and then put in a very safe box, sealed box usually, and then sent to the other center for sterilization. That, again, will help the center to do the following: to have an availability, what we call business availability plan. This is one, so nothing stops, no backlog, and that also helps that we don't buy excessive sterilization equipment. Okay, because normally every center will buy a backup machine, but then what about buying a backup for a backup for a backup? That's impossible. Okay.
Yeah.
So at some point in time, you need to mitigate this risk by relying on some other person or some other entity.
Yeah, and I do love how the foundation of both initiative is people working together.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's the foundation of every, I would say, successful, kind of endeavor.
Right.
Whenever someone puts a hand, the other person throws the other hand.
Yep.
And I love how both initiatives are coexisting in that way. But speaking about time, periods or something, like all this process, does it take a lot of time? Does it not take a lot of time? Or is that, dependent on a case by case kind of?
Exactly. It depends on both parties. Again,
Yeah.
it's a commitment between two hospitals. Okay,
Yeah.
so it depends on the formalities that they have to follow. Of course, every organization has its own governance model, so it depends. However, from our experience, it doesn't take much of time. There are few forms to be filled just to make sure that we never miss any instrument while sending back and forth, or we make sure that the medical equipment sent to the other center is checked before it's sent and then checked back while bringing back. Okay, again, this is an asset, and usually medical equipment are expensive assets. So we need to take care of the sending and receiving process.
Yeah, and considering the topic of today's conversation is sustainability,
Yeah.
like how does this play in the overall sustainability factor, especially here in Kuwait?
Yeah, again, what we have noticed is some hospitals, spend a lot of money on buying backup equipment. Okay,
Yeah,
so buying more unnecessary equipment means that we will have underutilized equipment, right? Because it's just a backup laying down somewhere for a while without even being used. So this is depletion of resources. Okay, we spend, again, medical equipment, something like, let's say, an anesthesia machine. Anesthesia machine is a critical care or a life support equipment. So we have a tendency, our hospitals have a tendency, just to avoid any planned interruption of service, because that relies also, or the life of the patient relies on that. So they tend to buy another backup anesthesia machine. So instead of, again, spending more and more on backup for a backup, we can reserve our resources by, again, agreeing with some other center. So this is one, money. Okay, we're reserving money here. And that makes it sustainable, because that money will be needed somewhere else.
It's going to go and pay for something else.
Now, what about the environment, the material that is used to build this machine? Okay, one of the biggest issues that we have at the moment with electronics and machines is when you discard these machines, they have silver, they have so many toxic also substances within. Okay, how do you discard them? These are not easily degradable materials in the environment. So if you take them to the dumpster, which is not a good thing, okay, they will not dissolve in the soil. Okay, so this is a huge problem. And then recycling is still not very let's say efficient when it comes to equipment and hardware. So the best thing is not to order, not to buy excessive amounts of electronics, because at the end they will go back to the environment in a negative way, let's say.
Yeah, and honestly, I do want to thank you for both initiatives, because not only are they helping the hospitals, and honestly, this is a message to all hospitals out there: reach and contact Hussein Saeed, because honestly, these initiatives sound like they are a win-win kind of situation. With that being said, I do want to thank you for dedicating the time out of your day again, for joining us and talking to us about this initiative. But unfortunately, we did run out of time for this conversation. So thank you again.
Thank you, Abdullah, and thanks to KTV2 for giving me this opportunity.
Well, again, all thanks goes to you, and all thanks goes to you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying tuned. We are going to take a break, so sit back and watch.